looking, reaches, oh, that ball's out, that's live! Back the other way, Sam Hubbard! The Cincinnati Kid! Hubbard's got a convoy! Chased by Andrews! At the 30, the 20, he will score!
To the end zone, down the field, and it is deflected, and gone! Touchdown! A.J. Green!
Over goes back to throw, men are coming late, looks right down the middle, there's Eddie Brown, he has it at the 35 to the 30, he may go, 10-5, touchdown!
Now the Bengals Super Bowl chances rest on his right foot. The kick is up.
Yeah.
It is good!
Corey Dillon, he's gone. The knockout punch, you're looking at it. 65 yards. And they're back to throw as the blitz is on. Goes long, intended for Collinsworth. He has it down to the 20, touchdown! And Chris Collinsworth.
Throwing the long ball. Deep down the field. Trent Johnson's got it. Touchdown, Cincinnati.
Look at Chase go! Oh my goodness, what a gear he just found! Chase for the touchdown! Wow, Chase is on the case!
It is no fluke. It is a fact. The Cincinnati Bengals are headed to Super Bowl 56. The play clock at 3. Shotgun snap. Carr throws into traffic. Intercepted. Jermaine Pratt has the football.
Yeah.
Coffin nails.
Bam, bam, bam! How about that?
Welcome into a special Halloween edition of Chatterbox Bengals. No champions this week, but I couldn't leave you without your zebra Phil.
Yes.
So Ellie Rue joining me today for Halloween Chatterbox Bengals.
I'm honored to be a part of the official podcast.
That's right.
So I'm a part of the live podcast, but not the official podcast and the YouTube stream. So now I'm officially a part of it, and I'm happy to be wearing this costume.
I was going to see how long we could go before we mentioned the peanut butter and jelly
Well, we're going to have to talk
costumes.
about it really quick.
But we'll get it off. We'll get it off at the start.
Yeah.
I'm a very festive guy.
Sure.
I don't think the rest of this company is.
I
found that out yesterday.
No, I don't think we are. I don't dress up on Halloween. I hate it. Jacob texted me yesterday. I'm at a Halloween store. This was immediately after work. I'm like, do you think this costume would be good? I'm like, yeah. Text me back like an hour and a half later. Hey, I'm at another Halloween store. You think this is good? I'm like, yeah, that's really
first
good.
one was fine.
And then like 30 minutes later, hey, I'm at this third one. And is this one good? I'm like, you know what, Jacob? They're all great. So Jacob went to 3 Halloween stores. That's more Halloween stores than I've probably ever been to in my entire life. But nonetheless, we are here. I am the peanut butter.
And I am the jelly.
Okay, look at that. Makes sense.
It's magic.
Makes sense, baby.
We're not here to talk about Halloween.
Nope.
We're here to preview Week 9.
That's
Bengals, every game here on out's a must-win. I think we all know that. So it's pointless to say that this is a must-win because we've been saying it for weeks. And the fun thing about the Bengals in must-win games, they haven't won a lot of them.
Well, here's the good news. The must-win games when the team is bad.
That's right.
They're 3 for 4.
That is true.
The must-win against the Patriots on opening night or opening day. Didn't win in that one. Didn't win it. The other 3, though, we've been good. So
that is true.
If that's to give you any confidence, that should give you a little bit.
The Bengals need to be able to beat poor teams.
Correct.
That's the only way you're going to be able to stay afloat this year. We
the
know
only
it's going to
way.
be a struggle against elite teams all year long. Changes are going to have to be made to compete at that level, and changes, honestly, at this point that I don't know are coming.
I think what I saw at the beginning of the year when I was looking at the schedule was if you're able to beat the garbage and just beat respectfully, if you're able to beat the garbage teams and then a couple of the other guys sweep a couple, or not sweep, but win a couple of the divisional games. Maybe beat the Chiefs, maybe beat the Eagles. Obviously, the latter's not really happening, but we have the Bengals still in a position where you can still beat most of the bad teams on this schedule, which would then give you the opportunity to make the postseason. You're going to have to beat a good team eventually.
For sure.
But that's down the line. It's a week-by-week, game-by-game, snap-by-snap mentality right now if you're a Cincinnati Bengals fan and if you're a Cincinnati Bengal on the team. But right now it's solely on the Raiders. The Raiders aren't a good team.
That's right. No, not at all. Not by any sense of the imagination. And Zach Taylor said earlier this week that the Raiders are much better on film than they are on paper. Much better than their record says. Elliot, I have a few statistics here
Okay.
about the Raiders' offense, defense, and special teams.
Okay.
As we know, the only 3 sides of the ball.
That's
So
right.
not a whole lot more information than this. Rushing offense, EPA per play, 32nd. How many teams are in the NFL?
There's 32.
That is right. Passing EPA per play, 26 out of 32. PFF pass coverage on defense, 32nd. PFF pass rush grade, 25th. PFF special teams grade, 31st. This is not a good football team.
No.
They can get up there and say, oh, they get paid too, and they do. And any given Sunday, anyone can win. I get that. We've seen that with the Bengals already happen a couple times this year.
Yep.
There's no excuses for this week against the Raiders. If you can't beat the bottom dwellers in the AFC, then what are we even doing sitting here doing a show?
No, there would be no reason. And I'm looking at some of the opponent stats here. First downs, opponents are absolutely destroying them. And I'll give you some reference. So first downs by rushing, 52 first downs by rushing the opponents. The Raiders 31. First downs by penalty 12. 12 first downs by penalty, 82 by passing. Teams are just running up the score on the Raiders, and it's disgusting. Again, rushing per average, 3.6 for the Raiders. You have 4.6 for their opponents in games. Total passing yards, again, 1653. Raiders are down every game, so they throw the ball a lot, 1832 on the other side. So basically what this is, if you can get somewhat of a lead.
That's right.
Any glimmer of a lead, this game is over.
How you can tell the Raiders' quarterback situation is as bad
Yeah.
as it is they've played both quarterbacks multiple times this year.
Yep.
They've pulled Minshew for AOC. AOC I pulled the second time because of injury, but now back to Minshew. Neither of these guys are any good.
No, and Minshew, I thought Minshew was a better quarterback than he's been this year. This year's been a disaster.
Horrible.
The Raiders, by the way, have a minus 13 turnover ratio.
Whew.
They're not good. Gardner Minshew, whenever he's had an opportunity to make some sort of big play, some sort of good, competent play, he has not done that. It's been a disaster pretty much from the jump. You trade your best wide receiver who hated the team and wanted to leave immediately. The one positive, if you have to say anything about their offense right now, the running game's abysmal. The quarterback's abysmal. The one positive is that they do have a tight end that's pretty damn good.
They do.
They do have one tight end that leads the league in receptions.
Not for just tight ends.
Not for just tight
He
ends.
is the number 1 receiver in the league this year in terms of receptions. Incredible production for a rookie.
Now, I will say, I'm looking at the stats just based on Raiders versus their opponents.
Yeah.
They are sacking. They are sacking opponents' quarterbacks. So if you have to have one little bit area concern, it's that they've got a hell of a defensive player on the other side of the field there.
And I think that's a perfect segue to the big thing that a lot of Bengals fans are worried about this week, the injuries.
That's right.
Injuries have popped up a lot over this season for the Bengals. The D-line ravaged early in the season. We saw teams run all over the Bengals. And since the D-line has gotten healthy, the run defense has been much better. Top 15 in the NFL since that point. Certainly respectable in the front 7. The back end has struggled, but more injuries reared their head, or I guess not more injuries, old injuries continue to plague this team this week. T. Higgins has not practiced, unlikely to play this week. Orlando Brown also not practicing, not in uniform, unlikely to play this week. We know how much T. Higgins means to this offense. I'm not going to belabor the point we've talked about week after week. When T. Higgins is out, Zach Taylor struggles to scheme his receivers open, and with a player like Jamar Chase, that's incredibly frustrating to see week after week. But the one I'm circling for this week is Orlando Brown being out. Because like you said, the Raiders are able to get after the quarterback. Orlando Brown, one of the best tackles in all of football. His backup, Cody Ford, maybe not even a tackle. More of a guard. And he's going to be out there on an island against Max Crosby a whole lot this weekend. Not a recipe for success. Joe Burrow needs time in the pocket. And that's something I'm worried about with this Raiders defense.
It's for the record, the offensive line, you kind of touched on it. It's been better. It's been a better situation this season than it has been in years past. Saying that, he's still a top 10 quarterback that's getting sacked.
For sure.
And this offensive line, though, has been better, you can't afford to lose them.
Not at all.
You can't afford to lose anybody. And right now, respect to Cody Ford, a little off-season drama as well, off-the-field drama. I don't think he's going to be able to get it done as a long-term solution.
Not at all. So
you have that to deal with when you're facing against one of the best defensive players, one of the best athletes in the NFL. It's a major area of concern. But my thing is, hopefully, Joe Burrow hopefully won't have to pass in the second half.
Right.
That's my goal. The Bengals need to at some point play like they're trying to win right out of the gate. And that's the thing I took from the Zach Taylor quote is, man, they're playing tougher than what they look on tape, or what you see box score wise. They look tougher on tape. And maybe that means Zach Taylor is going to draw up one of those conservative play calling days.
Yeah.
That it's going to be, we're going to just try to make long drives and slow. No, we're not throwing downfield anymore. We're still just throwing short, little screens, little wide receiver cuts, and we'll see what we can do there. That's my fear. But if you're able to run the ball a little bit, you're going to be fine in this game. And that's, I guess, one of the bigger area concerns as well.
For sure. And the Bengals' rushing offense this year has been lackluster, to say the least. Only 12 explosive runs. That's runs over 12-plus yards, which is an improvement from last year.
Sure.
And letting Joe Mixon walk to the Texans, or I guess trading him after the cut, and bringing in Chase Brown and Zach Moss in this backfield, the whole rationale was we're going to have more explosive runners, more bigger plays, being able to seize less opportunities and make more out of less touches. Because while Joe Mixon has been great in Houston, the reason why that production I don't think is translatable to Cincinnati is because we don't run that same scheme. He's not getting that many carries.
Yeah.
So to look down there and say, 150 yards, I wish that was in Cincinnati, not exactly fair. But a good way to measure that is explosive runs, runs over 12-plus yards. Like I said, the 12 for Bengals running backs through 8 games, Mixon has 12 as well. But he's missed 3 games.
Oh, boy.
5 games this season for Mixon, 12 explosive runs. I think that falls on the offensive line. Chase Brown through the first few weeks of the season was tied with Chuba Hubbard and Derrick Henry for explosive runs and yards per carry. Since then, only 3 explosive runs for Chase Brown, none for Zach Moss. This rushing offense has fallen off drastically since the beginning of the season, when it was something that I thought was a strength of this team. Something I was very worried about coming into the year. I thought Chase Brown had changed my tune on that. Not quite the case as the season has progressed, and going against a Raiders team where I think you are going to have to run the ball, it's not something I'm excited to see.
Do you blame at least a little bit, and I don't mean to harp on Zach Taylor too much, do you blame the play calling, the coaching style
Absolutely.
when it comes to running the ball? Because it seems like there's a lack of creativity when
sure.
it comes for the Cincinnati Bengals and running the football. I've seen other teams be able to do it successfully. And maybe if you have Derrick Henry, you don't need to be as creative as others. But I'd still argue the Bengals' creativity when it comes to some of these run plays, you're running out of shotgun, you just hand your ball to Chase Brown and say, go do work. It's a different sort of vibe than it is elsewhere around the NFL. And maybe that's just a Bengals problem. But it's something for me that I look at. Chase Brown, again, he's averaging over 4.5 yards a carry. So there's that, but I would say some of that is on those explosive plays that you've mentioned. You had the 30-yard run against the Giants to clinch that game, and there's a couple other notable ones. But it's one of those things where if you're banking on one explosive play, but they're not happening. They haven't happened in what you said, 3 weeks, 3
Basically.
games. So it needs to change at some point, and maybe it's. You have to rely on Zach Moss more because when those explosive plays were happening, Zach Moss was still the lead runner. As of the past couple of weeks, it's been Chase Brown's backfield. So maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. But it does certainly have to get better. And as you mentioned, which is why we talked about this, the offensive line needs to be better with the run game as well.
Without their best player.
Correct.
Which is a major ask, especially playing Max Crosby, which is how this whole thing started.
Yep.
But with T. Higgins out, the other main injury, we saw a lot of questions about where Jermaine Burton was after last week. One catch, 40 yards. We've seen 2 games now with 1 40-yard catch for Burton, and not a lot else. There's been a lot of clips on social media, routes he's running that look very good, where he's not getting the ball. I think a lot of stuff with the wide receiver position you don't see unless it's a big play. So it's a lot to build off for Burton from the last few weeks. And that was echoed even more by Joe Burrow in the press conferences earlier this week. We talked about it this morning on Off the Bench. Burrow spoke for about 3 to 4 minutes on Jermaine Burton and how he should be getting snaps. Joe said that Burton needs to be playing more. He's seen enough in practice and in games to warrant more playing time. And he spent some time focusing on talking about Jermaine Burton and his separation he creates against man-to-man coverage and how it's different than everyone else on the team and how he really does have a special skill set. When you hear your quarterback come out and talk about a guy who's not playing, I think that's something that's pretty rare, especially in a Bengals offense where you have locked-in pieces like a Jamar and T. Higgins. I know T's been banged up, but when the quarterback's up at the podium, I would expect him to be talking about those guys, or even the Andre Yoshivas, who's playing over 55% of the snaps. He chose to talk about a guy who's had 7 targets so far this year. That leads me to believe that he's putting pressure on this coaching staff and front office to play him, to make a decision here. And that's not something I've seen from Joe Burrow in his time in Cincinnati. He's been buttoned up, doing his job, going along those lines, and not pushing the coaching staff and front office. This seems like the first step in him making some proclamations himself about the direction he wants this team to go.
I will say it's also the first time maybe in his Bengals career where he's been desperate.
Yes.
I don't think they've had this desperation before, this utter failure that's been lingering in their stomachs for the better part of 2 months. I think that this season had high expectations, and when you fall flat right out of the gates, it's a disappointment, and it's hard to keep getting back up. They've done it in the past. They've been able to go on long winning streaks. You've seen it. But for the first time, maybe in Joe Burrow's career, it's not going his way. You're not seeing the Bengals luck into things. You're not seeing Evan McPherson nail kicks. You're not seeing the wide receiving core step up.
Yeah.
You have 2 wide receivers, one of whom is not very healthy.
Right.
And I say that with love and respect. T. Higgins is a very valuable player. Without T. Higgins, honestly, I don't know what the Bengals are this season. But if he's not able to play, you have to have another answer. And the fact that Jermaine Burton was drafted last year
in the third round,
and you're not using him, I think speaks volumes. And there has to be some sort of reason that we don't know.
Right.
All we have is the one little clip between Al Michaels and Herb Street where he said maybe they don't know, or maybe he wasn't listening in a conference or a meeting. That's all we have, and maybe that's what we're basing this off of. There's a chance maybe he's just not ready. Maybe he's not understanding the playbook. Maybe he's not getting the separation during practice. But I think that's hard to believe based on what we've seen in the very limited sample size during these games. You have to play Jermaine Burton. You have to play Jermaine Burton. I'm looking at the reception leaders right now. Mike Gesicki, because of last week, because he's basically had 2 really good games.
Yeah.
He had 25. He's up to 25 catches. That ranks 3rd on the team. Outside of that, it's Zach Moss, who catches the dump-offs. He has 23. And then it's 18 with Eric All Jr.
Yeah.
Yoshi has, again, I try to be nice to Yoshi because I don't think anybody in
It's a good story that he's even in the conversation to be a meaningful piece to this offense.
I think nobody in Bengals country thought Yoshi was going to be some wide receiver 2, wide receiver 1. The goal was to maybe have him be a Mohamed Sanu type, maybe be somebody who could catch meaningful balls in moments where you don't have to rely on Drew Sample. He's better than Drew Sample. But at the end of the day, you still need a guy that can make explosive plays. Jermaine Burton is that. You said he had, 2 catches? 2 catches for 88 yards. You're not going to see that out of many other receivers on this team. You got 3 guys that can make explosive plays. One of them's hurt. So why is the other guy not being utilized? I don't get it. Joe Burrow's confident in his ability to be a competent, serviceable wide receiver too. I'm also going to rely on my quarterback to know those decisions. So I'm going to say Joe Burrow's right. Please, please, please. This is a perfect opportunity. You're playing a Raiders.
Absolutely.
You're playing a Raiders team that's not good. We can. I said it during the Patriots week 1. You can make as many excuses as you want. They've got a couple defensive players here and there, just like Max Crosby. They have one of the best in the NFL. There's no excuse on this planet that you lose this game. The Raiders are abysmal. And if nothing else, you were talking about, I know, Jacob, maybe resting T. Higgins just because it's almost like a walkthrough game. And it's not like you're giving up on the game, but even without T. Higgins, the Bengals are talented enough to win this game.
Absolutely.
By 2 scores at least. This shouldn't be close. My concern, though, I've said it shouldn't be close like 4 different times, and you either lose or it's significantly close. The Giants game, you win by 10 points barely. You beat the Panthers by 10 as well, and I'd argue the Panthers are one silly turnover away by Andy Dalton from being in that game. And I just think that right now the Bengals have to take chances with guys that you maybe don't believe in. Jermaine Burton is that chance. Take your shot with him. Give him a try.
At the end of the day, where I'm at with Burton at this point is if he doesn't know the playbook and he doesn't know the routes, I've seen enough of the other guys.
100%.
Figure out a way to make it work.
Yeah, if they know the routes and that's what they're giving us, then I mean, who cares?
I mean, this last weekend, Andre Yoshivas doubled up Jermaine Burton's stats.
Yeah.
Doubled up his snaps. 51 snaps for Yoshivas, 24 snaps for Burton. They had the same amount of targets. Burton was targeted 3 times. Yoshivas was targeted 3 times. He's unable to get open. And then the fact that Trenton Irwin is playing 16 snaps, don't even get me started.
He had a magical run last year. Give the guy a break. He had a magical run. I will say, though, if you're relying on Trenton Irwin to make big catches, your organization's probably not where it needs to be. And that's where the Bengals are right now. They're desperate. It's a desperation game by the Cincinnati Bengals.
And you have to figure out what you have in Burton because the prospect of T leaving Cincinnati
that's the biggest
is
part.
right on the horizon. It's probably at the end of this season. I know Bengals fans are trying to talk themselves back into it now, but I think we all know the reality of the situation that we're probably watching the last few games of T. Higgins and stripes. And we have a receiver here who has at least shown a little bit of excitement for fans to get behind him, and we're not even running him out on the field. I know Iosivas, Charlie Jones, Trenton Irwin cannot be the T. Higgins replacement.
Yeah.
I don't know for sure that Jermaine Burton can. I certainly don't feel like that's a safe bet, but we don't know until he's out there. And I think that's the biggest thing. And going back to the press conference clips, Burton was asked about his playing time today, and he said, I can't put myself in, but I feel like I would have been able to make plays up to this point.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the sentiment that might be echoing through the entire locker room is these guys, I don't think they're anti-Zach Taylor. I don't think they've ever been anti-Zach Taylor, and I think that's partially because he is such a player's coach and doesn't do the hard things, doesn't coach players very hard, and I think that's why a lot of these guys might like him. I think a lot of this stuff happening over the last few weeks is a bubble up of, hey, you're our friend, but maybe also be our head coach. And the way these guys are talking, it's raising their hand, hey, look over here, look what I'm doing in practice, because it doesn't seem like you're watching.
I think the guys that have been here for a long time, again, it goes back to you need wins, and they're starving right now for victories.
Yeah.
They're trying to be that team at the beginning of the season, and they're just not that, and they haven't figured out that you have to pivot. You have to pivot off the preseason Super Bowl expectations.
That's right.
You have to pivot off the let's win the division expectations. Right now, you're fighting to survive. That's the expectation. Zach Taylor and this core, this group that we've had for several years here, they've not experienced this, and now after last year, I think they did an admirable job of staying within and trying to fight their way. But at the end of the day, when you don't have a quarterback, you can't win games. When you have a quarterback ready to go, you have to do everything in your power to try to win. And if it's not working one way, which it's not right now,
100%.
The way it's working without Jermaine Burton, it's 100% not working. If you're not going to go out and make a trade, fine. You've got a player who right now is our expectation to be wide receiver 2 next season. We haven't seen him.
Right.
And you can't go into next year thinking, all right, do we have Jermaine Burton? Because that changes the whole draft.
Everything.
Then you have to draft wide receivers instead of drafting defensive players.
And we're not talking about changing mid-round philosophy.
Correct.
We're talking about round 1 philosophy.
Yeah, and it changes everything. I think that the locker room hasn't been lost yet. I think the locker room will be lost if they were to lose this game and maybe the next couple. There's going to be a breaking point. We're not there yet. We're getting closer than we've ever gotten before. And that's a scary thing for all of us, not just us. But there's 2 aspects to being a head coach in the NFL. There's the job that we see, and then there's the job that Zach Taylor does that we don't see. The job that we don't see, for as far as we know, up until this very moment, he's very good at.
Yeah.
He's good at getting the locker room together. He's good at inspiring a culture of winning, inspiring a culture that people want to come here. Free agents have never wanted to come to Cincinnati. They've had a terrible reputation up until Joe Burrow got here. The culture has shifted with Zach Taylor, and that's a great thing. That's as nice of a thing as I can say to a guy.
Absolutely.
He's changed. Zach Taylor has been a large part of the culture shift with the Cincinnati Bengals.
He's gotten this franchise to a point where a 3-5 start is upsetting.
Correct.
That means something.
100% it does. The issue right now for Zach Taylor, with that culture changes those expectations. I don't expect the Bengals to just make the playoffs anymore. You have those high expectations. And when you fall flat consistently, season after season, right out of the gate, you have to point your finger at somebody, and those fingers are starting to get pointed. At Zach Taylor, at Lou Anarumo, at the entire coaching staff, Duke Tobin, everybody is getting a finger pointed at him right now. And that's right. I think it's like that Office. It's the Office bit where Andy and Michael and Pam, they're all like this.
That's right.
And that's kind of
Dallas.
And that's kind of what it is right now. And we haven't gotten to the point where they all go at each other. So win this game, and it goes a long way just to the vibes. Keep the vibes intact, and in my opinion, anything's possible. So massive game on Sunday. You can't overlook it. They're 7.5-point favorites.
Last I saw it was 8, but it could have moved.
8-point
it's
favorites.
7 even, not even the hook.
You need to win this game by 7, man. You have to win the game by a touchdown. Show us that you can blow out a team.
Yeah.
Every other team has been capable of, every other team with wins. I think even the Raiders beat the Ravens somehow down 20 points in that game. They come back and beat them. I know the Raiders aren't good, but everyone's had that defining win, that game season-changing win.
Yeah.
It seems like. Bengals haven't had that yet. And I think this is maybe the game where it starts. I don't know if you remember the game where a couple years ago when the Bengals played the Raiders, and it was the Joe Mixon game.
Right.
Joe Mixon had a hell of a game. This is a game that feels like it could be a heavy rushing attack, a get-right game for Chase Brown and the rushing group. Zach Moss and him can fight their way to 30-plus touches. It won't happen that way, but this is what I'm thinking in my brain. Get up early, establish the run, and in the second half, you get to have the Zach Taylor coast offense, which I hate when he just sits back and he just let's run 3 times and not change anything. But if you're up by 14 points, I don't care what you do. So that's my mentality right now. Try to get up early. Have Joe Burrow guns a-blazing. First couple drives. See if you can get a 21-7 lead, 21-14 lead, and then go from there.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are circling next week in Baltimore as the game of the season.
Yep.
This is the most must-win game of the season this week. And I'm not just saying it because it's next. Obviously, the next game is always the most must-win game when you're 3-5. But I think playing the Raiders at home is the biggest game left on this schedule for the Bengals because you are 0-4 at home, losing to many teams that you shouldn't have lost to. And I'm even going to count the Ravens game in there. I know the Ravens are a great team. That's not a game you should have lost by any means.
Nope.
You should, at the
Zero
very
excuse.
least, have 2 home wins. At the very least, in the Patriots and the Ravens. And you're sitting at 0-4, 3-5 on the season. Turning that philosophy around, turning that home atmosphere around, getting fans bought back in. Obviously, winning on primetime against the Ravens will get fans bought back in.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything that gets fans bought back in more in Cincinnati than Paycor Stadium rocking on Sunday and blowing out the Raiders like you should. Looking like the championship contender that you should look like. I think that is the biggest point for Bengals players and fans right now to buy back into the big picture here.
That's what I'm looking for. And I'll ask you, what are you looking for in this game? I'll answer real quick. I'm looking for the confidence that we had offensively for the first several weeks. I'm looking for that groove. I'm looking for that ability to throw downfield, throw the ball downfield. I can't pray and ask for that enough. Jamar Chase is fast enough to get separation to be farther than 15 yards downfield. The Bengals shouldn't be where they are ranked in the NFL when it comes to 15 yards or 20-yard passes. You need to throw the ball more downfield. This is a game you can do that, but I'm looking for that offensive spark. If we put up 45 and the defense just no shows and they drop a goose egg and we lose 48-44, it's going to suck, it's going to be disappointing, and there's nothing we can do at that point. But I need the offense to do everything in their ability. You can't trust the defense. You can't do it. So you have to do your job. That's Joe Burrow. That's Jamar Chase, Mike Gesicki, Jermaine Burton, and the offensive line. They have to be able to do their job and show us that they're still there because the past 3 weeks they have not been there, and they've been relying on a defense that sucks. Respectfully, the defense isn't good, and they're not going to give you any wins. So you have to go out, win this game because I'm not going to ask you to reread all the ranks that the Raiders are in the NFL, but they're terrible. They're terrible in every metric. Go out and score points. That's what I'm looking for. What are you looking for?
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm in your same boat with you. From weeks 2 through 5, when the Bengals offense got the ball, whether it was a punt or a kickoff after the other team scored more often than not, I would have immense confidence that the Bengals would at least get in field goal range and have a chance to put points on the board as soon as Joe Burrow touched the ball.
Yeah.
For the last 3 weeks, that hasn't been the case. I know you're not a Browns fan, not a Deshaun Watson fan.
Nope, I'm not.
What was the main thing we talked about with that offense when he was in there? They hadn't scored 20 points.
Correct.
And what does that mean in the NFL? That means you're one of the worst offenses we've ever seen.
Correct.
Because not scoring 20 points gives you zero chance to win if you have the 85 Bears defense out there.
Yeah.
In modern NFL, you can't win games scoring under 20 points. Somehow, the Bengals found a way to do it 2 out of 3 weeks.
It's insane.
Scored 17 points against the Giants. One of those touchdowns coming when he should have went down.
In the last
really
10 seconds,
points.
Yeah.
14 points against the Browns because we won 21-14. It was a Charlie Jones kickoff return. And then turning around and scoring 17 points against the Eagles. This is 3 weeks of inept offense. Borderline bad offense.
And this is where you start to point the finger at Zach Taylor because that's his thing.
Absolutely.
Your game is offensive play calling, and if you're unable to do that this week against the Raiders, you cannot be the head coach anymore. You can't do it. The Chiefs lose games they shouldn't lose every once in a while. The Ravens lose games to the Raiders. Every once in a while, you lose games you shouldn't lose. It seems like right now it's not even about the wins and the losses. It's that they disappear in these losses. It's that I don't recognize who I'm rooting for. I know who I should be rooting for, and that's an offense that puts up a lot of points, that can drive down the field in an instant, and that you can get rapid production. That's not been the case. By the way, you mentioned the Giants on a last-minute touchdown. The other touchdown was a 50-yard scramble by the quarterback on 3rd and long. On 3rd and impossible, it took a miracle Joe Burrow 50-yard run and a run in the last 20 seconds of that game to secure a victory.
Right.
This hasn't been a smooth offense at all. You had a great drive against the Eagles. It reminded me, honestly, of remember the drive last year against the Titans? You march down all the way, first drive of the game, you march all the way down, you kick a field goal, and then after that, just disaster. It reminded me a lot of that. But this is a game you cannot lose. It's just because if you lose this one, it changes the dynamic of who you are, and who you are is a team that has to reset.
Yeah.
Right now, I don't think we're at the reset point. I know Jacob's probably closer to that point than I am, but you're not at the reset point. You don't have to change everything yet. The defense needs to be addressed. Unfortunately, they're not going to address it during midseason. They've never addressed anything. They won't do it now. They've made 2 trades in the history of the franchise midseason. So they're not making a move. So you have to rely on what you got there. But you have an offense and a good enough offensive line when healthy where 17 points a game is not going to cut it. This is the game we need to see 27 points, 30 points. I need to see 30 points.
Yeah.
I'm not asking for a lot here.
30 points in an NFL game.
You're playing the Let's can I see?
You're
can
right.
I see? I want to see what the Raiders. I'm gonna see what, I gotta maneuver through this costume right now.
That's all right. There's something I did want to touch on that you briefly brought up there. Not gonna waste my breath talking about trade deadline targets.
Yep.
Because the Bengals are not making a move. I do just want to kind of put out there why it's so frustrating that the Bengals aren't making a move. How many times has Zach Taylor said in the last week that they're confident with the guys they have in their building? Many times. At least a handful.
Every time.
Here is where Bengals D linemen, and we're just going to focus on the D line. I think
Sure.
that's, you can't do every position. Here's where Bengals D linemen rank on the pass rush win rate metric. Trey Hendrickson, 7th out of 140.
Okay.
Phenomenal.
Great.
Joseph Osai, 85 out of 140.
Well,
I'll take it.
That's okay.
That's respectable. Sam Hubbard, 111 out of 140. Oof. Miles Murphy, 128 out of 140. Oof. How about the interior? BJ Hill, 26th out of 152. That's awesome. He's the 3rd best D lineman off pass rush grade from PFF this year since he returned. It's been great. After him, Sheldon Rankins, 105. McKinley Jackson, 128. Chris Jenkins, 138. How about Lawrence Guy, who we picked up off the street, 135. Jay Tufele, 146. But they're confident in the guys they have in their room. How can you watch those guys play football on a weekly basis and say I have faith in them in our room? You can't.
You can't do it.
They're not good football players. And that's why I have a hard time blaming Lou. And as this season continues to transpire, I think he's going to be the scapegoat at the end if it continues to go this way. He's going to get fired, and they're going to blame him because that's so much easier than rebuilding the defense or firing Zach Taylor. These guys are not NFL players. Yeah. And if we get to the back end of the defense, it's a lot of the same story, or at least the level that they're playing at right now is not good enough. Yeah. I don't know how much you can ask them to do.
It's been a failed season in terms of the defense, and there's nothing you can do at this point, really, other than let it ride and hope the offense can outscore what the defense is doing. So that's the only option. And by the way, the Raiders have given up 30 points 3 times. One of those to the Panthers. They gave up 36 points to the Panthers.
That was the Dalton entry game, wasn't it?
Yep. They gave up 32 points to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Every team has scored 20 points on them except for the Deshaun Watson-led Browns, which was the worst offense in NFL history. So I'm confident in the Bengals.
I'll co-sign 30.
I'm confident in the Bengals' ability here. The Rams, without players, scored 20 on them. The Chiefs scored 27 without passing touchdowns. Patrick Mahomes has been not great this season. You need to win the game, man, and there's no excuse otherwise. The Broncos, who I have zero confidence in whatsoever, if they can score 34 points, you have to be able to match the Denver Broncos and Bo Nix. Yeah. I don't know what Bo Nix did in that game for the record, though. Bo Nix, 19 for 27, 206, 2 touchdowns, and Javonte, 13 for 61. But saying all that, there's no excuse. There's no comprehension that you can have when it comes to losing this game. You can't lose it. So go out there, win it, and be the offense that we all know you can be.
And we're harping on the offense because that's the side of the ball that we were supposed to have faith in this year, and it's the hardest one to kind of swallow them not being very good, or at least for the last 3 weeks, not being very good. It's a very hard pill to swallow with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase out there. But defensively, the Bengals have done a very good job against this tier of teams.
Yes.
They've struggled against good teams or even okay teams, but even that Patriots loss,
The defense did their
16
job.
points.
The defense did their job.
Giants, 7 points. Browns, 14 points. This is that level of team.
Yeah.
So I want to see the defense play well, too. And I'm not saying that like I did for the Giants and Browns games where I was trying to get back in and get back excited about the future of this defense. I'm out. I am out on this defense being even average this year. It's not going to happen. But the only way to be a respectable football team is to have a defense that can shut down Gardner Minshew and the Raiders. They don't have Devontae Adams. Jacoby Myers has been banged up for weeks. Zamir White forgot how to play football. Alexander Madison's averaging under 3 yards a carry.
Bearcat? Trey Tucker?
There's nobody on that team that scares me offensively.
No.
It would hurt really bad if they were able to score 20 points.
I don't think they should be able to. Gardner Minshew, 6 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Aiden O'Connell hasn't been anything spectacular either. 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. It's just, it hasn't, listen, I'm not going to say it's impossible for the Raiders to score. That's the only thing. I need the defense to be that same team.
For sure.
But every time the defense has been that team to stop a bad offense, the offense hasn't shown up. So honest to God, I'd rather have a great offense than a great defense at this point. If the offense can give me 34, I have a hard time believing the Raiders are going to be able to keep up with the quarterback and running situation that they have there, which again is terrible.
And especially just personnel-wise, like I said, it's a lot easier to swallow.
They've got a
side of the ball struggling with Geno Stone and Logan Wilson
Yeah.
as the big names. I mean, a side of the ball struggling with a $50 million quarterback and a $40 million receiver on the horizon. There's a lot more question marks there. So certainly hope the offense can get back on track this week, and certainly a great opportunity to do it against the Raiders. And thankfully this game's at home. Hopefully get some more juices flowing in Paycor Stadium. I've seen a lot of people on Twitter, Facebook, all the Bengals fan forums selling their season tickets, Elliot.
Oh, boy.
Selling their season
Already,
tickets. Rest of the year, opting out of next year. Believe in this team long term. We have Joe Burrow. If you're not excited to watch Joe Burrow play quarterback for the Bengals regardless of their record, I have bad news for you for the rest of your life. Because you're probably not getting a more exciting player in Cincinnati. No. It's not going to happen. We hit the lottery by picking number 1 in a year where a generationally talented quarterback from this state entered the draft. Not only is he great on the field, he's perfect for this community and this fan base because he's one of us, at least to a degree.
Yeah.
That's why Bengals fans love him so much. So 3-5, 3-6, 3-7 if we lose the next 2, I don't care. I'm going to get excited to watch Joe Burrow the rest of the year.
Okay, now wait. Now, see, this is where you lose me a little bit. Like if they're a disaster,
I'm still gonna get up for it.
I don't know if I'm gonna get up for it. If it's a complete disaster, like I'm not gonna go overreact and sell season tickets. You know what the issue is? The issue is the defense, and the defense is going to be addressed.
And I think that's what I'm talking about.
At some point, and you can't overreact long term, but you can react short term because this has been a consistent issue where the Bengals don't get ready. It's never been an issue where we don't win games at home.
I do think being mad at the team for the way they're handling it and stopping watching is 2 different things.
Yeah,
I'm going to be mad the whole time I'm watching.
Yeah.
I'm still going to be excited to watch Joe Burrow quarterback my favorite team.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to separate as fans right now because I know we locked him up long term. It's a big time contract. There's still an end date.
Yeah.
There's still an end date to when he's going to play quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yep.
And who knows how many more home games we got. One of them's this weekend against the Raiders, and we're 3-5, and people aren't going to go watch.
No, people
Come on.
This is, and by the way, this is actually the last game. If you're going to do the nonsense that Jacob's talking about, wait until after this one because this is the cutoff point of the season.
For sure.
You lose this game, I'm sorry, there's no coming back. You can't come back from it. We can talk about 10 games in a row, 8 games in a row, 5 games in a row. There's no games in a row if you can't beat good or bad teams at home.
That's right.
There's just no excuse for it.
That's right.
This should be an easy win. This should be a cupcake walkthrough. There's no excuse for the Bengals to lose it. And if they do, that's when the season's done. The season is not done as of this very second. You win this game, you play the Ravens, who, by the way, again, Jacob mentioned it, you won that game.
Right.
I know it doesn't count and there are no moral victories,
Twice.
yada, yada, yada. You beat the Baltimore Ravens in that game twice. That's what you have to do with. That's the next big game the Bengals have. That's what you have to deal with coming up. So we're okay at this very second. So everybody calm down, try to take a deep breath, and you have a bad team. Go watch the Bengals hopefully kick some ass against a terrible football team.
Yeah, and that's the goal. That's the goal. Not a whole lot more to get into, but it is a Thursday show, so we got to wrap it up with Thursday night picks.
Yes.
I know you got, 10, 15 first leg bets out?
Yes, I do. So hold on, let me pull them up. All right. So number 1, I'm going to bet Dalton Schultz.
I'm in on Dalton Schultz.
He's in on Dalton Schultz.
I believe I'm in on another first touchdown as well.
That's correct. We'll get there in a second. I'm going to take Breece Hall plus 350. It usually hits. It's kind of like a Derrick Henry thing. If Breece Hall is running the ball, usually eventually he's going to score first. So I'm going to take those two, and I'm also going to take, if I believe, John Mechie III. Hasn't been a large part of that offense in years past, hasn't been a large part of the offense this year, but due to the absence of Stephon Diggs and Nico Collins, somebody's going to have to catch a football.
That's right.
And it's going to be him and Dalton Schultz. Both of them. Both first touchdowns. and anytime. Be safe with it anytime.
You have to also sprinkle anytime.
Correct. John Mechie III to score first, plus 2,100. Again, they don't have wide receivers, so somebody has to catch the ball. And I'm not going to take the obvious pick of Tank Dell.
Right.
I won't do it. Other than that, I'm going to take Devontae Adams, alt line, to get 100 yards.
I love that.
Alt line, by the way, that's plus 500. Plus 250 for Dalton Schultz to get 60 yards.
Okay.
Just doing some alts here. I will be also doing over 1.5 touchdowns thrown by each quarterback.
Love that.
I think there's a chance it goes under, but I also think I'm stupid. So
I am on the under.
Okay, and that's fair. We can score two. Each quarterback can throw
Absolutely.
2 touchdowns and go under. We can go low, but those are who I got so far.
My big one tonight is, again, alternate line. Got to hunt the value.
That's right.
Garrett Wilson receptions, and I'm taking the 7+ receptions at plus 200. His line's at 4.5. I think it's an overreaction to Devontae Adams being thrown into that offense. He leads the NFL in targets this year.
Yep.
Aaron Rodgers isn't just going to stop throwing the ball to Garrett Wilson. Another line that I think is an overreaction, and I'm going to take because of it, C.J. Stroud's passing yards is below Aaron Rodgers.
Really?
220 for Stroud, 230 for Rodgers. I'm going to go hunt and see if I can find a head-to-head passing there and take Stroud. Otherwise, I'm just going to take the over 220. I think C.J. Stroud's a great quarterback. Obviously, no Nico Collins, no Stephon Diggs is going to cause problems. I think he's going to be able to move the ball against this Jets defense, who has struggled lately. I'm taking C.J. Stroud's over as well. I'll get in on the over 1.5 touchdowns for both quarterbacks.
There we go. A little parlay.
On that as
Do a
well.
little parlay. Do a little parlay.
I love that.
You'll have good odds there.
I love that. And the under. Halloween, primetime under.
Yep.
I'm in there.
Don't understand, by the way. I don't understand how the Jets are favored, but to each their own.
Me neither. And neither is the public, because there's over 95% of the bets on the Texans.
I've heard, I have a sportsbook guy. Not that I have an inside guy, but I have a sportsbook guy, and he's been tweeting out that like every public bet on the planet has been placed on the Houston Texans. Do with that information as you
know what
will.
they say? The buildings are big in Vegas because the public wins.
That's what they say. That's what they very much don't say.
That's right. That's right. So if you're following the public, take the Texans. If you're sharp, take the Jets. Otherwise, Chatterbox Bengals will be back on Sunday. I'll be there at kickoff till the end of the game, and then joined by Craig Sandlin for an immediate post-game show after hopefully the Bengals' 4th win of the season against the Las Vegas Raiders. I screwed up earlier this week and called them the Oakland Raiders.
That's fine. You can do that.
We're like a decade in of Vegas.
No, you can do that. You
All
can
right.
do that.
Well, Vegas, Oakland, whoever it is, Raiders coming to town. Hopefully the Bengals can get a win. Certainly a big-time game for this season. Elliot, thank you for your time. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for this beautiful suit.
Of course. Peanut butter and jelly. Happy Halloween, everybody. Hoo day. And we'll catch you guys next time.